So welcome to MailChimp Advanced Tools. This is the last session in our four-part, can't speak English today, our four-part series. Today we're going to be going over merge tags, a couple of different kinds of emails that you can set up, automated emails that you can set up, including a final welcome email and final unsubscribe email. And we'll also talk about how to set up and use subscribe forms through MailChimp. And a couple of other features as time permits. So again, if you're not familiar with Zoom, if you're in full screen mode and need to use your desktop, just hit the escape key. That'll give you access to your start menu and all those sorts of features. If my video is floating in the upper right-hand corner, there will be a couple of times that you'll want to move it, and you can do so just by left-clicking on that video and dragging it around the screen. You cannot be seen or heard during today's webinar. Only myself and Michelle Foster will be able to be seen or heard. If you have a question or comment throughout the webinar, go ahead and put that into the chat. And Michelle will make sure that I see them or she will answer them herself. If you see a raise the hand feature, please do not use that. That's not going to help you get in contact with us. But again, go ahead and use the chat and send those questions whenever you like throughout the webinar. You don't have to wait for a specific time or anything like that. We will send out a survey at the end of today that is just a star rating and an opportunity to provide comments. If you'd like to do that, we appreciate your feedback. I'm going to change these quite a bit over time to accommodate things that you guys have suggested and recommended and things like that. So go ahead and getting started. I'm going to switch over to my MailChimp. Please do let me know if you can't see my MailChimp at this point. Because you should be able to. And so I'm going to start off with talking to you guys about merge tags. And we have talked about these a little bit in previous webinars. And remember, merge tags were what we saw in our footer between that asterisk, the asterisk straight up and down line, capital letters, straight up and down line, and asterisk. And so what a merge tag is it's sort of a placeholder that is pulling information from somewhere else in the MailChimp program. So for example, here it says list address HTML. Well, that's pulling it from the address from your contact profile. So let me show you a couple of places where it's pulling this information from. So for example, if you go over to your audience and view your contacts, you'll notice that there are column names at the top. So there's this first name, last name, birthday, tags. All of those are things that have merge tags associated with them. So, for example, if you want to personalize your email by having dear and then the first name of your partner at the top of each of your emails or campaigns, you would end up using a merge tag. If you decide that you want to do something like that, you'll want to come to your audience page first and make sure that everybody has a first name or that it appears the way that you want it to appear, so that you don't end up with some awkward messages for different people on your list. Another place that they pull information from is from your contact information. So if you go to this menu up here and go to your profile and then contact information, this is the page that you would be looking at. And if you scroll down, you'll see here's my contact name, here's the address, phone number, email, certain things like this. So like this address here is what's going to appear here. Okay. And then another thing to remember about merge tags is that they are connected to your audience. So when you're setting up your campaign, okay, so if I go back to the campaign page, until you set this very first field, this to field, when you first start a campaign, there is no audience connected to your email. You actually have to go into edit recipients, choose your audience, choose if you want it to have a tag or a group, or if you want it to be everybody, and then click Save. If you do not do this, your merge tags will not fill in with information when you send a practice email or when you go into preview mode. After you set up your audience, that's when those things start working properly. Okay, so that's when you go into preview mode or send a test email, that you're able to see what this information is going to look like. Okay. So What we're talking about today then is how to use those merge tags to personalize our messages a little bit. Let's skip these messages. So the first thing is there's a couple of different places that you can put merge tags. You can put merge tags in any text box, and then you can also use merge tags to create a button. Now, some people have asked if they can use merge tags to put as the subject of their newsletter, and so they're actually putting their partner's name into the subject of the newsletter. There's various opinions about whether or not that's actually a helpful thing to do. A lot of people, or I've seen some articles that will talk about that's actually not a good practice. Some email clients think that that's spam. Other articles think it's a good idea because it's personalized it right from the beginning. So it's really knowing your contacts and whether or not that's going to be a good option for you. If you're playing it on the safe side, I would not put merge tags into your subject header for the reason that I explained earlier. That some email clients will sometimes filter those out as spam. So it might not be a good idea for you to do that. But one good place where you could do that is if you have your beginning story and you wanted to say dear your members, or dear your partner's name. Okay, what you don't want to do is you don't want to type that person's name here. So I wouldn't say dear Jan, because then that name, dear Jan, is going to go to all of my partners, not just to Jan. Okay, so in order to use the merge tag, so that the appropriate name shows up for each contact, again, you're going to want to move my video. So if my video is floating in your upper right-hand corner, this is one of those times where you're going to want to move it. In the upper right-hand corner, kind of the upper right-hand corner, you'll see this menu that says merge tags. And you're going to see that there's this huge list of merge tags. This actually isn't all of the merge tags. At the very top, you see where it says open cheat sheet. If you click on that, it'll take you to this page here, all the merge tags cheat sheet. And if you start scrolling down, you'll see that there's lots and lots and lots and lots of options. We're not going to go through all of these today, simply because it would take up all of our time. Okay? And a lot of them aren't helpful really for what we're doing as well. So again, to put dear first name of your partner, you just go to member data and click first name. Now, if you use this drop-down menu and these are missing, it's because you not have yet connected the audience to your campaign. Okay? So I just talked about that. If you haven't done that yet, a lot of these options are going to be missing. Okay? So once you've had your audience connected, you can choose this, and you'll see that it put the asterisk, the up and down line, capital letters, up and down line, asterisk. Okay? So this is what it looks like. Now to check it, so I want to preview this or I want to send a test email, you have to click save and close first before you go to preview and test. If you do not click save and close, this will not appear correctly. Right? I learned that the hard way. I was very frustrated the first time I tried to do this. Now that I hit save and close, I can go to preview and test and enter preview mode. Okay, right now, it still says test first name. It's because I haven't turned the switch on. Once I turn on the switch, you'll see it gives you an example of a first name that gets plugged in. You do want to check that as you're working through your newsletter and using merge tags to make sure it doesn't appear in a way that you didn't anticipate. Okay, so like some people might want to do first name and last name. To do that, you put a space after the asterisk and then go back to your merge tags, include last name, and then decide, do I want a comma after that? Do I want no comma? Do I want something else? And then again, click save and close, and then you can go in and test it. You have to turn the switch on every single time. I just not remember that. Okay, so now it has your first and last name. So the first time I did this, they combined the names, they put extra spaces, the comma was on a different line. So do make sure to kind of play with it a little bit and make sure it's going to appear the way you want. So that's contact information. If you have connected this to TNT, okay, you'll see here I have TNT Connect information. Some people might have pulled over their salutations or their greetings. If you did that, then you'll see those options appear here as well. So maybe you already have hello Jan as your salutation, or not your salutation, as your greeting in TNT Connect. then you'd be able to use that. If you're going to use that, again, test it and make sure it says what you think it's going to say. The next ones that we're going to look at is social sharing. So I'm making sure I didn't miss anything before we go on here. There's a lot of information about merge tags. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to scroll down to is this social sharing. So I talked about a couple of these in previous webinars, and I said, just keep waiting, we'll get there. The first we're going to look at is the Facebook like button, which I really didn't want to be part of my title. So I'm going to go down here. Now I'm putting all of these at the top of my newsletter. I don't necessarily recommend that this is where you put them. I'm just doing it for ease of use sake right now. But a lot of this would probably go towards the bottom or near a specific story for the Facebook like button.
Jen, we have a clarification question here.
Sure.
It's saying, so you're saying it's okay to include your first name to personalize it, but not part as a bold title to avoid being seen as spam?
Okay, so not necessarily the title, but the subject. So what I mean is you don't want to do it here. When you're setting up the subject of your newsletter, technically you can put a merge tag here. I've seen some people do that in the past, and it seems like a good idea until you know that some clients count that as spam. So this is where you don't want to do it. You should be okay to do it anywhere inside the email itself, though.
I would add you probably don't want to do it in the preview text either.
Right, yeah, and anywhere on that page I would stay away from. Okay. Get back into my editing. So with the Facebook like, when we went over the reports during the tips and tricks webinar, I told you if you post your newsletter to your Facebook feed and somebody likes your newsletter from the Facebook feed, that is not what the report is counting. What it is counting is it's counting this merge tag right here. All right, so if I click save and let's just stop sharing my screen. Sorry, hit the wrong button. If I click save and close and then go into the preview mode, turn on the button, okay, you'll see that this little like button appears. If people click on that, that's when it's going to start showing up in your MailChimp reports. Now, the only thing that happens when somebody clicks on that is, well, two things happen. One, it shows up on your report, and two, it goes in the activity feed on Facebook. So it's not posting to anybody's wall. It's not sharing your newsletter. It's just having that activity feed of this person took this action. And so really what this is it's not an advocacy tool. It's a way for partners to interact quickly with your content. So it's really probably geared more towards younger folks. So I would say probably 20s and 30s are the only ones that would really interact with this or even know why it's there. That's of course not uniform across everybody. But for the most part, if you have people on your partnership team who like to have a way to immediately interact with your content, that might be a reason to use this. Again, I would probably put it closer to like if you're sharing a specific picture or some sort of story or praise report that you're offering your partners. That might be a place to use it. I don't personally use these in my own newsletters, but it might be a way for your partners to engage. The other thing that you can do with Facebook is there are actually two other options for Facebook. There's a Facebook profile and recent wall posts, and then there's just the Facebook profile. Facebook profile and recent wall posts include, last time I checked, it included your last 3 Facebook posts in your newsletter. The problem with that is it does not include pictures and it does not include videos. So if you were to use this tool and you made a comment on a picture on your own Facebook feed, it's going to show the comment without the picture. So of course the problem with that is if the comment doesn't make any sense without the picture, now your partners have no idea why you're sharing this content. So I typically don't recommend you to use this unless you're very proficient with Facebook, you're really paying attention to what you post, and you know that that's what's going to show up in your campaigns. Okay? And so think about the archives. If somebody goes back and checks some of your old newsletters and you quit paying attention to Facebook, you might now have some very strange information showing up in your campaigns when you send it to a church or when you send it to a potential partner to ask for past copies of your newsletter. So just, if you're going to use it, be savvy about it. Be really careful with this. You don't want to confuse people about why you're sharing random content that doesn't seem to have anything to do with anything else. Okay. Now, the Facebook profile is a little bit better. We'll click Save and Close. Now, the Facebook profile is only going to work for the person who integrated their Facebook account. So what I mean is if there's a married couple using the same MailChimp account, right? If you did an integration, so this was last week, we talked about integrating your Facebook account. You can only integrate one, and that's the one that's going to show up here. So you can't have more than one show up with this specific merge tag. And I'll explain a little bit better about how you can do a different way you can do both people here in just a second. All right, so if I go into preview and test, this is what it's going to show. So it shows your name, it shows your profile picture. So again, if you're using this in your Wycliffe ministry emails, you want to make sure that this is a good profile picture of you and not something random like a picture of a lake or a tree. Okay, so it need to be a picture of you. I don't know the benefit of why it shares how many friends you have, but it does. Again, if you're going to use this, I don't have the About Me section of my Facebook filled out, my Facebook profile. So if you're going to use this, you want to go to Facebook, fill out the profile information. So this is actually helpful to your partners. And then Friend Me, of course, lets them send a friend request if they're not already your friend. But that's really all that is. Again, that's something I would put towards the bottom if you're going to decide to include something like that. And the other way to include another merge tag for social media is the social share links. So you see this MC MailChimp top share. This is one of those that are not often what people think it's going to be. So when I go in, you see it's just a list of social media icons. These are not linked to your social media accounts. So if somebody were to click on Twitter, the little Twitter bird, this is not going to take them to your Twitter account. This is going to allow them the opportunity to post your newsletter on their Twitter account. Facebook, Pinterest, whatever they click on, they're going to be asked if they want to post your content on their site, on their account. Okay, so if you take this and you just stick it at the bottom of your newsletter and you don't tell anybody about it, I would say you have about a 95% chance that no one will ever click on any of these buttons. Okay? If you want somebody to engage with this, it's probably going to be somebody who's already your advocate and is interested in sharing. So there are people who naturally want to share your content with their own network. Maybe they do that through your newsletters. If you have people like that, you're going to want to have a conversation with them. So maybe you pull up an example on your phone or you send them an email or something like that, but to intentionally tell them about these icons and say, hey, here's a great way for you to advocate for my Wycliffe ministry by sharing my posts on your social media. Okay? Again, if you don't do something like that, probably nobody's going to engage with those buttons. All right, so just keep that in mind. So there's something called the default field. So this first name, last name, I started off this webinar by encouraging you to go check your audience list and make sure these first names and last names are what you want them to be before you start using merge tags. One way to safeguard against accidentally ending up with something that you don't want is to set up defaults. Okay? To set up defaults, you go to your audience and you go to settings. Okay, so even if I start from here, so if I go to the audience page and I go to manage audience in the upper right hand corner, and then go down to settings. Okay, I'm going to scroll down and you'll see it has audience fields and merge tags. So I'm going to go in here, and you'll see there are a bunch of options. Okay. So the first thing is determining whether or not a field is visible or not. What this means is, does it, real quick. Visible or not means, is it visible here? Okay, so right now, first name is visible, last name is, birthdays, tags, that's visible. All right, so, which is interesting because it looks like it shouldn't be visible, but it is. So maybe it's not true. But these are the different merge tags that you have available to you right now that you can use. So you'll see first name is indicated by this, and that's what showed up in the example that I showed you. Okay. And so all the way over to the right, you'll see default merge tag value. So what you would do with this is put something in like valuable partner. I'm not going to have good examples off the top of my head. But if that person's first name, you don't have that person's first name in your database, what do you want to appear there instead? Do you want to say, if it's dear Jan, usually, do you say dear friend, dear potential partner, dear whoever you want to have filled in there? This is what you'd want to put there. If you don't, it says something like dear first name. Okay, so you don't want to leave it blank. You do want to have some sort of information, or it'll say dear without anything. That's not really helpful either, because it's going to be confusing. Or they're going to realize what happened, and you really don't want that to happen either. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so you want to put in something here so that if you don't have information in this column, then this will appear in the campaign instead. You can add your own merge tags. So for example, I worked with somebody who wanted in the body of their email to have a merge tag that would fill in the date that the person attended an event and the location of that event. Okay, and so we set it up like this. We went into their Excel sheet that they imported into MailChimp. So when you import your contacts into MailChimp, we actually created 2 extra columns. So we had email, first name, last name, and we had date, and then we had location. And when we did that, those showed up here as merge tags, which allowed us to insert them into the body of her email. So there's actually a pretty powerful tool. There's a lot you can do with it. If that was just absolutely confusing and you're not really sure what I just said, that's okay. Let me know if you're trying to do something like that, and I could probably meet with you one-on-one, and I can help you set it up. Okay. If you just want to explore it, you can also add a field here. If you add a field here, again, it's going to show up here. So if I were to put partner type would become a column here. And then but the downside of that is I would have to edit it one by one, which is why I said we did it as an Excel sheet. If you add it to your Excel sheet and import a second time, all you have to do is click on the button that says update if already in my database, and it shouldn't create duplicate records. It should just go ahead and fill in the missing information. Right? So that's what you do with the default tag names. And that's really the basics of what I wanted to share as far as merge tags go. Again, there's a lot more that you can do with merge tags. And we're going to use a different one a little bit later in today's webinar. But those are the basics of how to use them and what they're for. Now, again, remember, the ones that appear in your footer, you don't want to change, right? You're not allowed to delete these because they're part of having a free account with MailChimp. They're part of making sure emails are following spam laws and all that kind of thing. You don't want to change, you don't want to type in between the merge tags. So where it says current year, you don't want to go in there and type 2019. It's automatically going to do that when you send it out. Okay, so don't, as far as the merge tags that already exist, don't change them unless you're very comfortable with what you're doing. So there are some things you can change, but you take the risk of making a mess by doing so. Okay? If you've messed this up down here and you need to start over, remember that the footer is actually a content block. And so you can delete the one that has the mistakes and just bring a new one over and start over. Okay, so there's several people who've needed to do that in the past. All right, so that's all of merge tags. The next thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to start talking about final welcome emails and then what's called a goodbye email. So before I dive into that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what those are. The final welcome email is if you're using a subscribe form, which we're going to learn to set up a little bit later today. So if you have a subscribe form and you email it to somebody or you send them a QR code, I'll explain that later. However you do that, if somebody's using a subscribe form to send it to your newsletter, do you want there to be a welcome email? So once they subscribe, they could receive an email that says, thank you for joining, or thank you for wanting to receive my Wycliffe Ministry updates. You're a valuable part of this ministry. Thank you so much for praying and partnering with us. Okay, something along those lines. Totally made that up off the top of my head. But if you want them to receive something along those lines, that's what we're going to talk about setting up. The other email is called a goodbye email, or sort of like a final unsubscribe form. And what that means is if somebody were to unsubscribe from your newsletter, they would receive an email saying, hey, we noticed that you unsubscribed. We're sorry to see you go. Are you sure that's what you meant to do? So the reason that one's important is because of what we've talked about in previous weeks. If somebody from your list that receives your email forwards that to somebody else, and the person who receives the forward unsubscribes, they unsubscribe the partner, not themselves. Okay? So if that occurs, then the original partner would receive this email that says, we're sorry to see you go. Did this happen by accident? If so, click here to resubscribe. Okay? So it's a kind of a built-in safety net for people who are getting accidentally unsubscribed. That's what we're going to talk about setting up. To do that, you want to go to your audience. Okay, and then go to Manage Audience and Sign Up Form. Well, before we do that, we're going to go to Manage Audience and then go to Manage Contacts. And of course, everything is moved. That's not what I want to do. Give me just a second. Settings properly. Okay, so go to your audience page, manage contacts, and then go to settings. Sorry about that. They like to change things around on me. And then we're going to go to audience name and defaults. In this screen, there's a couple of different things you can do. I believe we've talked about some of them in previous webinars. So what I'm going to do is scroll down and just talk about these three options over here on the right. Now, this is just one place where you can turn these options on, but I just wanted to show you that they are here on the screen. So here's a send a final welcome email. So not only do you have to set it up, but you also have to turn it on. Okay, so if that's something you want people to receive, make sure to check that box. Let users pick plain text or HTML emails. Again, this is if they're using a subscribe form. So if they're signing themselves up for the newsletter, they can choose whether or not they want to have all the colors and special fonts. If you don't check this, they don't have that choice. Okay, so that's up to you, whether or not you feel like you have partners who would prefer this pick plain text. Okay, so that's personal preference. And the last one is send unsubscribe confirmation. That's one of the other things I just described to you in the goodbye email. If you're going to be using this, you will want to turn it on. Again, there is another place for us to turn it on that seems more convenient, but I just wanted to show you that this is here. All right. So from here, we're going to go back to our audience, manage audience, and then we're going to go to sign up forms. So when you go to the sign up form page, part of your audience, you'll notice that there's a bunch of options. So there's form builder, which is the one that we're going to use to set up and design each of those emails. There's embedded forms, So this is primarily for your subscribe form, again, that we're going to talk about a little bit later. If you want to embed the form into a blog or your personal website, you would use this portion here. And what that means is it's not a link, but they can actually see the form to subscribe directly on your website or blog. Okay. The next is subscriber pop-up. So this is referring to, you know, when you're on a website and you go to close out the site and something pops up on top of it that says, do you want to subscribe to our email? Are you sure you don't want to receive this? Would you like to do this? And you have to close it out before you can get away from the web page. That's a subscriber pop-up. So if you want to use that for a sign-up form on your blog or website, you can do so. I encourage you to exercise caution if you decide to use this, because I'm sure as you've experienced, pop-ups can be frustrating, right? So if you're going to use a pop-up, make sure that you have control of the settings. Are you able to tell it when it's going to pop up? So for example, is it going to pop up every single time a person opens your website? Or is it going to pop up every single time somebody tries to navigate away from your website? If that's the case, you don't want to use this. If you can set it up to only pop up the first time they visit, then this might be an okay option for your website. Okay, so just make sure it's not going to be something that is going to essentially harass your partners or potential partners, because they'll get frustrated and potentially quit coming to your site altogether. All right, so use wisdom if you decide to use this pop-up. Form integrations, I'm not going to go into that today. There's lots of things you can do with form integrations. A lot of it really doesn't apply to what we're doing, and so I'm not gonna go into it. If you're interested, feel free to go in. MailChimp has a lot of their own helps for that kind of thing. So you just Google that. So we're going to go back up to Form Builder and click Select on the far right-hand side. And so the first thing to notice is this Forms and Response emails, this drop-down menu. There's several options here. Okay, so we're only going to go over a few of them today. The first one that we're going to go to is the final welcome email. Okay, remember, this is what I said is the email that they receive if they use your subscribe form. So it's a thank you for subscribing to my email. So let subscribers pick email format. So this is another place where you can make these selections. Okay, this is another place where you can turn this on. One thing to notice about this page before we really dive into it is as you're making changes, there is no save button. Because there's no save button, it is automatically saving everything. So when you make if you change a color, you change a font, you don't have to do anything for it to save. It just does it automatically. The page that I originally made these selections, it did have a save button, and I didn't click it, and that's why these weren't turned on when I came over here. All right, so the fun thing about MailChimp is they're extremely inconsistent about when they have a save button and when they do not. And so what I encourage people to do is just check. If you've made some sort of significant change, go to the bottom of the page or scroll down a little bit, see if there's a save button. If you don't see one, there probably isn't one. If there is one, you have to hit it to save your changes. Okay? There's no easier way really around that. With this, you'll see that it's already kind of set up. Okay, so you see your subscription to our list has been confirmed. For our records, here's a copy of the information you've submitted to us. So you can just leave it this way. You don't have to make changes if you're happy with the way it looks, if you're happy with the words that it uses. However, you can also make a lot of changes to it. What you're going to notice as we keep going with this webinar is it's going to seem like I spend a lot more time on this aspect, on this final welcome email than I do on the final subscribe email and than I do on the subscribe forms. The reason for that is because it makes changes across the board. So if I change colors here, it changes colors in the other two as well. If I change a font here, it changes it in the other two as well. And the process is the same. So if you don't set this up, but you want to set up the other one, the way I show you to set it up here is the same for each of the other ones as well. And I'll show you the only differences that occur. But that's why it's going to seem like I'm spending more time here, is because the skills and tools that you learn for this one apply to the other ones in the exact same way. Okay. So the first thing that I want you to look at is this from, reply to, and subject. These are merge tags. Don't change them. Okay, so don't type in between the lines. Don't delete them. Don't put your own information. Just leave it the way it is. You can change this subscription confirmed because it's outside of a merge tag. So if you have something witty or cute that you want to put here, or something that makes more sense to you that you want to put here, you're free to do that. Just don't change the merge tag. All right. The next thing that we're going to look at is design it.
Jen, we've got a quick question that you can probably answer easily before we get too deep.
Yeah.
Where do people opt into your list?
Like subscribe?
Yes.
To my personal list, or is that a general question?
I think it's a general question.
Okay. We're going to talk about that when we get to subscribe forms. Okay. So, for example, there's lots of ways that you can do it. Every email that gets sent out, every campaign that gets sent out should have that view this email in browser. If you click on that link, there's a subscribe button in the upper left-hand corner. That's probably the easiest way, or the way that occurs automatically is that right there. But here in a little while, I'm going to talk more specifically about subscribe forms that you can share on Facebook or Twitter, that you can send as an email, that you can turn into a link or add as a button. And I'll show you that when we get there, though. So there's a lot of options that you can use to do that. Yeah. So we're going from build it to design it. And you'll see there's a whole bunch of options here. Okay, so we're going to start with page. And page is referring to this light gray that's all the way surrounding my form. Right? So it's kind of like the background color of your email. And I'm just going to pick colors. You do not need to have to pick the colors that I'm picking. I'm just picking them to show you the changes that you can make. Okay? So I changed that to black. And you'll see the whole background turn black. You'll also notice that the name of my newsletter or the name of my form disappeared. But if I hover, okay, you'll see this came up, edit, remove, use image. So you can use an image if you want to use your banner that you created. You can put that here. You can also click edit and just change this to white. Okay, so if I highlight the text and then go here and choose white and click save and close, now you can see the name that's there. This is the name of the audience. So they're signing up for this list. Again, you can change this text if you want. So whatever you want that to say, feel free to change the wording. You can also change the wording here just by hovering over it and then clicking edit. So instead of your subscription to our list has been confirmed, you can put something about, thank you for joining our mailing list. Thank you for choosing to receive our WordCliff ministry updates. Thank you, whatever you want that to say. Then the next thing we're going to go over to is the body. All right, and so, well, no, I did that too quickly. Going back to page, we're going to move over to header. All right, and so header is what they've made an orange line around. And so they don't actually allow you to change the color of this, mostly because it would look kind of awkward. But they do have this margins that you can change, and that will only make sense after I show you the next part. Okay? So going to the outer wrapper, you'll see that the orange line is now around the top and the bottom, which means if I change the color of that, it's going to change the color of both places. All right? So if I scroll up here, first I have to check the box to tell it that, oh, I thought you had to check the box, but apparently not. Go up to the background, hit the pound sign first. That's really important. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what numbers or letters you put, it won't accept them. I'm putting in the WordCliff blue. Here's the preview. Now I check box. That's what happened. So this is a WordCliff blue. Again, these codes will be included in the FAQs, which are on the website. Okay, so if you go to the website where you registered and say read more, okay, there's an FAQ right here. That's true of all of our webinars. There's an FAQ that'll have the color codes and links to everything you need about branding. Okay, so I changed it to blue. Scroll down and you can see the top and bottom are blue now. If I do this, I don't like that the top of the blue touches the words. So I fixed that by going back to header and then making these two numbers the same. Okay. And you can play with this and see what you want the numbers to be. But what it's doing is it's changing the space above and below the name. Some people don't like that the name touches the left side, and so you can put a couple of spaces and put save and close. And it didn't do it. Sorry, it's hard to see because I've made the text white. So I'll have to play with that a little bit, but usually you're able to put a few spaces, or you can center it if you don't want to sit on that left-hand margin. It's not working with me today. But that's how to do the page portion of it. The next is the body. And so this FFFF is referring to the background right here. I always turn it white. Oh, that's what FFF is, sorry. All right, so FFF is white. What I like to say about this is that there are people who want to change this to a color. So maybe they make it like a pastel or pale yellow or pink or blue. We recommend that you actually don't do that, that you go ahead and leave it white. And that's just because it's easier to read. People might be looking at this on their mobile devices, which have smaller screens. So you want it to be as easily readable as possible. So again, we encourage you to just leave it with that white background. Default text is something that you might want to change if you're trying to stay with Wycliffe branding. So if you've been using Verdana or Georgia throughout your campaign, you want to change this to whatever that font is. If I've been using Verdana, so I'm going to change this to Verdana as well. And I'm going to switch this over to black because that's what I've used for the rest of my campaigns, for my templates and all that. Okay. And then link style, this is just changing the color. So this is the link that they're referring to, the email address that you provided. So if you want that to match your wrapper color, or you want it to be a different color altogether, you're able to put in the color code to do that. Okay. Then we're going to move over to forms. So I really encourage you to be careful about changing this. This is looking at the button part. So this buttons and buttons hovered. It's looking at the subscribe here button. The reason I encourage people not to change colors with these is because right now it's gray. If I put my mouse over it, it's a darker gray. That's what people expect to happen when they mouse over a button. They expect it to change colors slightly. You can hypothetically change this to be black and red, or white and yellow, or some other color combination. But what you want to think about is if a partner hovers over your button and it does something they don't expect, they might not click on it because they're worried that it's a virus, or they're worried that it's going to take them somewhere they don't want to go. So just be careful about that. Okay, so you can change the button colors. It might not be the best idea. Now going to the field labels, basically what we're changing is the fonts. So you want to use the same font throughout your entire form and your templates. I know there's a lot of things to change, but I just encourage you to remember it is like the campaign template. There's a lot of things you have to change, but you only have to change them once. Once you've made all these changes, they're set like that for good. Okay, so you don't have to do it each time or each month or anything like that. And then just go through each of them. So I'm going to change this to Verdana, change this to black. Again, just being consistent. These required and required legend, help text, and errors, I would just go ahead and leave all that alone. Again, those are things that you want to be familiar for people, and so you don't want to go changing around a bunch of these things and then make it something that people aren't expecting as you're filling out forms, so that they don't get worried or concerned or anything like that. So I would go ahead and just leave that information alone. So the last thing that we're going to look at is this monkey rewards. And the monkey rewards is this guy down here. Okay, and you only have two choices, black or white. So of course choose the one that works best for your form. Now again, there's no save button. So this is completed. I have everything turned on. There's no way to save. It's just going to keep it when I travel away from this page. All right. So then the next thing that we're going to look at is the goodbye email. Okay. Again, so I have to turn this on. And again, this is telling people you've unsubscribed from the list. Are you sure that's what you meant to do? All right. This is a good one to have set up. What's nice is it's already set up for you. All right. So all the colors that we just used to set up the welcome email and the fonts that we changed, it was maintained across forms. All right. So again, that's why it seems like I spent so much time on one and not really very much with this one, but it's because it's already set up. Now what you can do is you can change this text here. So if you want to say something other than "we're sorry to see you go," you're free to change that to whatever you like. It does automatically have this "was this a mistake" message, and that's not something that you can change. Keep in mind that if you make a change here, it's also going to change your welcome email. So you can't have different looks for each of these emails, which you don't want. You want it to all kind of look the same so people identify the look and the colors with you in your Wycliffe ministry. All right, so that's all there is to setting this part up. Once you set up one, you have them both set up. And of course, you have to turn it on. And so the next thing that we're going to look at is subscribe emails, or not subscribe emails, I'm sorry, subscribe forms. Again, a lot of it's already going to be set up for us. And so we're going to go into sign up form.
So Jen, we have a quick question here.
Yeah.
If we don't want to send a welcome email, but we do want to send an unsubscribe one, can we just make changes on goodbye one, or do we need to make the changes on the welcome as well?
Yeah, you can just make changes on the goodbye email. Just make sure this one's not turned on. And again, making changes on the goodbye email is automatically going to change this one anyway. So whichever one you change, it's going to automatically make the change in both places. Okay. So really what matters is whether or not you've checked the mark, made a check mark. So for the subscribe or the sign up forms, we'll talk about this part in a little bit here. Okay. First is notice that the colors are already chosen for you and the text is already set up. So you don't have to change any of that. But there is more that you can change in this one than you can change in the other. The first is that you can add a message. So if you want to put something on your subscribe form about what they're signing up for, okay? Please sign up for our monthly Wycliffe ministry update. Please sign up for our quarterly prayer newsletter. Whatever it is they're signing up for, give a brief description right here so they know if they're comfortable using the form. All right. Again, you can change this. If you change this, it's going to change across forms. This part will. Okay. So if I change this to a different name, that's also going to be the name on my welcome email. It's also going to be the name on my goodbye email. And of course, you're going to check those, and it won't matter, but just be aware that they are connected in that way. If you click on these fields, okay, whichever field is peach, that's the field that has settings over on the right. Okay, so things that you want to look at, if I click on first name, you'll see that it's not automatically required. I recommend having the first name and the last name be required fields. The other thing to notice is that it didn't keep my change. So this is a place where you do have to save. All right, so if I click required fields, say save, then go to last name, do the same thing, click save. Okay. Why you have to save here and nowhere else, I don't know, just the way it is. Right. Now, the reason that I encourage people to go ahead and make these required fields is because you want to know who's receiving your updates. So some people don't have their name as their email address, and so most people don't want random email addresses on their list that they can't remember who that person is. So it just helps you have that information. You can reorder them. So if you want to move email down underneath their name, you're free to do that. It's just a drag and drop kind of thing. So you click on it, pull your mouse down, and it'll move it around. You'll notice that I have this birthday and TNT Connect information, but you'll also notice that there's this blue border around it that says hidden. What that means is right now, if I use the subscribe form, people who are subscribing will not be able to see this. If I switch it to visible, then they will be able to see it, or I can delete it altogether. Okay, so I can either hit the delete button like this and type in delete, and it's gone, or I can click on it, and then it has this plus and minus, and you can do a delete that way. Okay, so that's how you get rid of fields or keep them hidden. Another thing that you can do is add new new fields or new parts of the form from this right side menu. Okay, so if you're in a setting for one of the fields, so if I'm on first name and I'm looking at the setting, I can switch to click by clicking add a field. You'll see there's a whole bunch of options. I think the most common that I hear people want to use is the address. So you are free to include the address. If you choose to include the address in this, I would also say to not make it required, because maybe some people are uncomfortable with sharing their physical address. So I would recommend not choosing to make it private information.
So Jen, could you explain why someone might want to make a field hidden as opposed to being open?
Not really.
You don't know?
Yeah, I mean, I can make up a reason.
Well, I do it because of how I sort some of my people.
Okay.
If whether they're in the U.S. or overseas or local to me, I have that so that when I send out like an open house or something, it's kind of like doing tags. It was something that existed before tags existed for grouping.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I've never used the hidden fields myself, but people are creative. So yeah, if it's something that you're gonna maybe be switching back and forth, so you use it with one group and you want something to be there, you use it with another group and you don't want it to be there, that's something that you could turn off and on. Again, if you made changes, make sure you hit save because it will not keep it. If you hit replicate, it's going to make another address field. Or if I'm on last name and I hit replicate, it's going to make another last name field, which doesn't sound like it's useful. But if you're doing one of these other things, it might become helpful. I don't know, maybe you want to add more than one website or something. But that's how you create your subscribe forms or your sign up forms. The way you share this is there are several ways that you can share it. Okay, so you get this URL right here. You can send that directly in an email. You can make it a hyperlink that somebody can click on. You can make it a button. So for example, in your MailChimp campaigns, we talked about setting up buttons. I believe during the second webinar. I'm trying to get over here so I can show you. So down, I don't have any buttons. So, oh, there's one. So here's a button right here. So right now this is linked up to a personal missionary page. Well, I could also make a button that is linked up to my subscribe form. Okay, so if you know that people are forwarding these, maybe you want a subscribe button in your newsletter. Again, it's not the best way to do it, and it might be a common way that people are sharing your newsletter. So if you want to do that, you just put subscribe to this newsletter here, and then you'd put that link here. Okay. That's not the link. That's a link to the survey. But you would put this link here. So you'd copy this link and paste it over there. Facebook and Twitter. If you've integrated your accounts, you can click on this and it'll help you share this link. You can also just put this link in Facebook. So I could copy this link, go to my Facebook, and make that part of my post. Of course, you wouldn't want to just put that link. You would want to explain why you're using it. You can also do it as a hyperlink. Okay. Then you can also use this QR code. And so this is something that people can scan with their phone. And I've seen people put this into their print newsletters quite a bit. And you can decide how big or small you want it. Again, this is only helpful if the people you're sending it to are likely to know what that is. They're becoming more common, so there's probably more and more people who would be familiar with what to do with this code. But it's a way they can scan it with their phone, and your subscribe form will just pop up on their phone. So that is something that you can do as well. And that's how you would use this. And so I have seen some people go ahead and copy this and bring this to something like a home meeting and let people go ahead and use their computer to sign up. The only thing is if you decide to do that, is I would open multiple of these because if I would just open a bunch of tabs that have these. The reason I would do that is because once they hit subscribe, it doesn't open up a new subscribe form. It tells them that they were successful in subscribing. So they would subscribe, you would close this window, and then another one would be open for the next person. So I've seen it used that way pretty successfully. Depends on how big of a group you have, right? If you have 50 people that could potentially sign up, this probably isn't going to work that well. But if you have 5 or 6, it's pretty easy to sign up, to open 5 or 6 tabs, and people use it that way. Right? So that's another way that you can use it. So that's all that we're going to talk about with the form builder. Okay, so we did the final welcome email, the goodbye email, and the subscribe form. Again, making changes in one is going to make changes in all the other places. So I didn't go into the design section here, but it's the exact same tools that we used in all the other areas. Okay, so it works the same way as the other ones do. You'll notice these margins did not change this. I don't know why, and there's also nothing you can do about it. So that just kind of is what it is. But again, if I change the color here, it is going to change it in these other areas as well. So just keep that in mind, or you're going to get. Now, if you're going to use more than one, so if you're using the sign up form and the goodbye email, make sure you check both of them and make sure that they look the way you want. If you make a change in one, just go check and make sure it didn't do something unexpected. Like I said, MailChimp does like to update their things sometimes. And so we always want to make sure that we're not surprised by what we think is going to happen. All right. So that's that. The last thing I wanted to talk about was forwarding. And so, which is forward to a friend form. Okay, so the reason that this can be helpful is I've talked about this quite a bit throughout the webinar series, is that if somebody forwards your email from, say, Gmail to a friend, that friend hits unsubscribe. They've now unsubscribed to the original person. So if you have somebody who does this on a regular basis, an advocate, for example, you might want to include a forward button in your email and then teach that partner about that forward button. That'll make more sense as I keep talking. Okay. So one thing is you don't need to set anything up special, right? It's already here. If you've made these other changes, if you made the changes to the welcome email or the subscribe email or anything like that, this is already set up for you. You really don't need to make any changes. Okay. If you didn't set up any of those other things but want to use this, then you will need to come in and change everything. But it's using the same instructions that I've already given you. Okay, so there's nothing different. It's all the same. All right. What you do with this, okay, you'll see this is a subscribe form, so it's a way for people to sign up, but you'd actually make it as a button in your newsletter. Okay, so I would say something like, or something like that. Okay, and again, you want to point this button out to people. If you create this button and don't tell anybody, it is likely to never be used. So if you have somebody who does advocate by sharing your updates with other people, then this is important to go ahead and include. We're going to switch this. I think I actually leave it as web address. So you leave it as web address, and then we're going to type in a merge tag. Okay, so this is the other merge tag that we're going to talk about. And you just hit your asterisk in the straight up and down line, which is usually in the top row of keys on your keyboard, the far right. And then capital letters, type forward. Okay, straight up and down line, asterisk, and then save and close. Okay. And then if I go to my preview and test, click that button, you'll see that it pulled up the forward to our email to a friend form. Okay. That's the way that you can set that up. And again, they set that up so that you don't end up with people accidentally unsubscribing from your emails. And so that's basically what we planned on going over today. So we went over the merge tags, we went over final welcome emails, final unsubscribe forms. The final unsubscribe one, I really do recommend that you go ahead and set that up if you don't use any of the others, because inevitably somebody accidentally unsubscribes. And it's just the best way to try to catch all that. Some people still will not know what to do, but you'll have at least caught some of them. Okay, so it's just a nice buffer to have as part of your campaigns. We went over how to set up the sign up forms or subscribe forms, ways to use that, and then those forward to the friend forms. So this is the end of our series. Let us know if you have any more questions. I will be adding content to the third session next time around. So if there are things that you wish I would have covered that I didn't, please add that to the comment section in the and the survey that Michelle's going to add to the chat. It's a really short survey, so the only thing that's on the survey is the opportunity to give it a 1 to 5 star rating, and then to add any comments, questions, suggestions, etc. into a comment box, and that's all there is. So again, we appreciate your feedback if you're willing to do that. I will go ahead and stay around a few minutes, so if you have some more questions, let us know what they are. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. But thank you guys for joining us, and hopefully these were helpful for you.